So this webinar for folks that do not know who I am or we are, I'm Elisa, the founder and executive director of Pause. We're a nonprofit focused on supporting folks of color through end of life and grief. We connect folks to resources, to programming, to incredible folks doing work in the space, like the three that I have here joining us today. And this year, I'll say last year, we spent a lot of time growing, running at a very, trying to be like as calm and thoughtful and intentional as possible, running at a very different pace for us. And when we stepped into 2025, we'd taken a month off. And this year, for a lot of us, marks huge anniversaries, moments that we're reflecting on. And, my commitment and our commitment at Pause has really been around how do we think about pacing? How do we think about processing? How do we think about pressure to grieve or not grieve, the expectations around our grief, and really this myth of, well, it's been 5 years, it's been 10 years, it's been however many years, weeks, months, days. What am I supposed to be feeling right now? What should I have maybe moved on from in this moment? And so we wanted to create some space for that this spring. We wanted to provide sort of the structure to around different ways that we can move through and move with our grief, because it's not always as easy as just hitting a point and saying, I'm great. I figured out all of the things that make me feel good. I figured out all of the people in my support circle. I feel grounded and centered and like I have everything figured out around my grief. Sometimes we need some resourcing, some modeling from other folks in community, and support, especially if, like, I know I have felt in my life, we're feeling isolated at these milestones as well. So today, we wanted to create a space of ritual and reflection and resourcing each other in community to honor whatever it is that you are bringing in today, whether that's for a lot of folks we know, this year is hitting the 5-year anniversary of folks who died during that first year of the pandemic. We're almost 6 months from the LA fires. And I know for me, I am getting into the year of a decade since doing this work, and my mom died. Is coming up. And so really just sort of thinking about how can we take a moment to pause, to reflect, to maybe learn or have someone model for us those new rituals. And like I said, to resource each other. So the way that today we'll move through this hour and a half together is we'll do a grounding activity that I'm just going to invite everyone to do as we sit in whatever space we're at, to really bring us into this room and to think about our grief and how we're sitting with it right now. I'm going to do an introduction to all of the panelists who are here with me today. They'll introduce themselves and respond to a question. I typically, in these sorts of webinars, I pose the panelists, I give them a little question to think about and reflect on, and to share anything else exciting about their work that they'd like to share. Then we'll move into a ritual by Mingda, and she'll take us through this practice that maybe we might just use in this moment today, or we might use, it might spark something for you for the long term. And then we are going to get into a panel. So I'll be asking all the folks on our panel questions that I've prompted them with, and come up, and I'll probably, as usual, come up with things on the fly that feel relevant. And then after that, we will move into Q&A. I do invite you, ask your questions whenever in the chat. You can message me directly, or you can message the whole group, and I'll be tracking that for folks. Don't feel like you have to hold them back. It might take me a minute to find them and get to them, or we might hold them for the Q&A, or I might say, hey, y'all, can you actually answer this right now? Because it feels extremely relevant to the conversation that we're in. And then after the Q&A, if we have time, there is an activity from an ebook that we're publishing this spring that we'll be sending around to everyone that's a part of this webinar and all of our donors for this campaign. So we'll take you into a grounding, conversation, and then some Q&A and reflection. Just a couple of housekeeping bits before we land. I invite folks to mute yourselves for now, just while we land in the space together. I will likely, while we do this grounding and folks start putting stuff in the chat, I might go through and mute a couple folks, but if you're not muted just now, and then later when we get into Q&A questions, et cetera, please feel free to come off mute when we're inviting you to ask your questions. And other than that, I'm just grateful to be here and I'm ready to get into it. Again, like I said, anything in the chat, throw it in. And I'm going to start us with just a landing activity around reflection and visualizing what our grief might feel like. This is something that I've used in other settings. I was very curious about how this might land today with this group. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is look at the picture of what I'm going to call the blob tree. Maybe you've heard of this before, but you'll see the blob tree and you'll see all of these little figures moving up and down and around and off of and onto this tree. And I would love to invite you to sit with this picture and think about a couple of questions. So let me pull this up. I'm going to share this little. Can everyone see this? Great. Okay. So what I'm going to invite you to put into the chat is to sit for a moment, look at these little figures, and answer the question as you step in. I like this. Okay, I'm glad you're smiling, Mandy, because I'm like, this is, to me, this is like, you know, we can throw one word of how you're feeling today, but I love sort of this visualization. It's something that I've even used since being introduced to this activity. But the prompts that I have for everyone are, I invite you to share your name, where you're calling in from, and then I'd love for you to share a number that represents one of these blobs of how you're moving through your grief right now and how you're feeling in your grief right now. As you sit here and you enter this room, do any of these identify with how your grief is showing up for you today? And then I would love for you to share if there are any of these that are maybe very different or very similar, but that have shown up for you recently that ideally are different, right? So how are you feeling in this moment? And what's another sort of blob, a number, an experience of these that these figures are having that represents another way that you felt in your grief? So I'll give everyone a moment. Again, your name, where you're calling in from, and are there representations here that are showing how you are feeling landing in this space around your grief today? And feel like if you feel called to, you can give a little bit of context. I also invite you to look at the faces, not just where they're positioned on the tree, but the faces, the movement of their bodies. So yeah, I'll give everyone a moment. And I'm actually going to pick, I'm going to do this myself as well, and I'll throw it in the chat. And then we will move into our next sort of activity and ritual in this space. Yeah, thank you, Sheree, for sharing. Thank you, Charlene, for sharing. Oh, I love that. Usually one, observing and not on the tree. Okay, so sort of hanging out, watching, seeing it, but maybe not engaging with it as directly. Okay. Yeah. 15 and number 9 last week. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you.
Wait, is the tree grief?
Oh, that's how I interpreted how you were writing about it. That's a great question. The tree could be the grief and your blob could be how you're interacting with it. Yeah, great question, Charlene. Number 15. Let me find 15, Julie. Can you just, oh, in at the top, just hanging on, wait, saying hello? Is that, yeah, okay. Always, Julie. Great, great. I think where I'm feeling today, mm, I think a mix for me personally. I think I'm with my grief feeling a bit of 18. I'm really feeling 18. Mother's Day though, last last month, I was a hard 13. I was not doing well. I think this Mother's Day was definitely for me one of the most challenging that I've had. And it came out, not that it came out of nowhere, but where it was coming from felt very unexplainable to me. I couldn't put words to it. But in this moment, I'm feeling supported, which I think is what 18 really represents for me. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you. Someone in the chat just said, just survive Mother's Day. That is how I feel. I'm like, y'all, I made it. I made it out. Oh, and is it still May? That's not even last month. That was like 2 weeks ago. Oh my gosh. I feel like it's been 1,000 years since then. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to thank you all for sharing. Thank you for engaging with this. Um, Sometimes for me, it's nice to see something that isn't necessarily a word if I can't put a word to it, which is really how I felt around Mother's Day. But seeing like the movement of these little figurines is just another way to sort of like interpret what it is that I'm feeling in my body and how I'm showing up. So thank you. Continue to share in the chat. Thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, let's see. Great. I'm going to pull up your bios. Let's see. Great. Okay. So I'm going to go through the process of just introducing each of our panelists that we have here today. Julie, I'm going to start with you. Everyone, I invite you to welcome into the room Dr. Julie Shaw. Julie is the founder of Hello, I'm Grieving, a grief awareness brand and community geared towards grief awareness, visibility, and education. She's devoted her time and expertise to the field of diversity and inclusion by focusing on creating safe space climates on college campuses and being an advocate for the LGBTQ community, women's equity, and social justice. I'm going to share Julie's bio and a link to Julie's website in the chat. And Julie, I am going to invite you to share. How is your grief moving through you today?
Oh gosh. I would say and I like this movement word, right? Because I'm a former athlete. I played professional basketball. I coached collegiately for like 15 years. And I feel like it physically moves through me. Like, so that's how I'm interpreting it. I think that I've been as many people are, they're on this journey with their health and they try to work out and do all these things. But I think that it is moving through me. It is stored inside of me. I could feel it in my body. I could feel it when I move and do, like today I was on the treadmill or I've started to run. They're going to have a Nike half marathon here in Los Angeles. And it's here in a couple weeks or maybe less. It's on June 7th. And I am not prepared for it, but I feel in a way I know that the movement is going to be good for me. And I think anytime I've done any physical activity like that, or even thinking of this half marathon, it's actually also a reminder that I actually ran a marathon probably about a month after my sister died. And it's making me think about that. It's making me think about how on that run, it was very hard, but I knew there were people alongside me. There were also people going through other things, and just that type of movement and movement in community. Um, yeah, I feel like your question took me on this journey itself, but I feel like grief is literally moving through me, and I want it to move out of me. You know, at some time, someone when it gets too much. And yeah, because I posted about this the other day. I even cried on the treadmill the other day. I had no idea where it came from, but it was just I think it's because it literally did that. It moved through me and found its way out. So as much as I'm kind of feeling ill prepared for this half marathon, I'm also actually looking forward to it and seeing what else comes out of me during it.
Why? Thank you for sharing. And why am I just like loving the idea of it being welcomed and not freaky to people, that like those kinds of spaces are for running, and for a lot of folks I know, like meditating and
Yeah.
being in that zone to process and release things. I
Oh my
love the
goodness.
idea of a bunch of people running a half marathon and crying if that's what they need to do.
Yes.
So
And they
thank
will
you.
be, I'm
And they
sure.
will be. You might be. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being here and for all of the work that you do in the world. I'm just um deeply, deeply grateful. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Charlene. Charlene is a certified grief coach. Grief coach,
What
speaker.
are you?
Uh-oh, hold on. There we go. Grief coach, speaker, and founder of the Grief Gallery, through which she presents exhibitions exploring death and grief during international design events and festivals, including installations in London, Toronto, and Los Angeles. Lamb is the author of the book Curating Grief, a creative guide to choosing what to keep after a loved one dies. Charlene, thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. And how is your grief moving through you today?
Thank you as always for the invitation. Um, Currently I'm feeling a bit like I'm in an ocean of grief and there's some grief osmosis happening. I did a talk earlier, so I feel like, oh, I'm carrying a bit of other people's grief, but also my own is leaking out a bit. So grief osmosis, like just trickling in both directions. It's gentle. So that, yeah, making it through Mother's Day, I was like, huh, okay, we can do this. So at least it's a gentle grief right now.
Thank you. I love, it something was coming up for me. I don't know why I associated this word with osmosis. Like I kind of do, but it felt soft to me, the movement in and out of you, that sort of cycling too. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here. I'm like, I know this is the work that you do, but also thank you for showing up to hold more of our grief and conversation around this today when you've already been in spaces doing this work. So I appreciate
Oh,
you.
you know we can like do like a marathon,
Yes.
24-hour marathon of just
It's like all day, every day. Yeah, yeah. Thank you though, Charlene. Okay. Minda, you ready? Yeah. You know what?
I'm here.
That's an okay answer.
I think I don't know. The thing that comes up for me is it's like lingering smoke. But when I'm thinking about it a little more, I'm like, I also am having moments on like fire, it feels like so yeah, it's like lingering smoke. It's around, it's subtle, it's soft, it's present, but thinking about it moving, it's moving through words, writing, walking, and also like crying on the street. Like I was crying the other day where I'm like, well, this is New York, so here we are. I'm adding to the landscape here. Um, but yeah, it's a soft, subtle, but it's still present. So I think that's kind of where it's at right now.
Thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing. And I shared your bio in the chat for folks. Thank you for talking about what sounds like this sort of like complexity and duality of your grief, right? To think about fire, to think about tears, to think about all of these different ways that it's showing up in your body and in your brain. To me, just points to, again, this like complexity. of how our grief can show up in us and for us and to move through us. So thank you. And thank you for crying on the street too. I'm like, I've cried on the street. We're all in it together. Like if I saw any of you crying on the street, I'd be like, typical day, we're out here doing the work and modeling. But thank you for also, I think, giving people, it sounds like that invitation to say, like, when it's coming up, when it needs to move out of you, like you said, Julie, any of these spaces, if you can find safety in them to do that, can be appropriate to let those things move you. So thank you. Thank you. Um, yes, she is magic. And you know what? I'm just going to turn it over to you to give you some time and space to land us here again with a ritual and meditation, and whatever you're bringing into the space today, just to invite us into a practice that we might be able to adopt or use. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone that's here today, I think we're just going to tailor this to what's been shared in this space and what we're talking about today. And I love that blob exercise. I was giggling. Again, the dualities in all of this. There's some lightness to it. But that was a form of us maybe facing our grief today and meeting it. So why don't we listen? And I think maybe we could just take some time. Everything's an invitation. But if you'd like to get settled into a meditation, and from there, perhaps if you have anything that you can express after that, we can have a moment to do just that, whether it's through writing, whether it's through tears, whether it's writing on your phone. But we'll just do a short meditation to keep anchoring into honoring our grief today, acknowledging it, acknowledging our loved ones, our lives. So if you want to get settled in your seats, whether you are lying down or in a chair or snuggled up on a couch, and on the theme of time and arriving, so perhaps we give ourselves permission just for these few moments in this meditation to really arrive, where we can meet ourselves and we can really listen to our grief today. And just begin to settle into your body, noticing where your hands are. Are they rested on your thighs? Or would it feel more comfortable on your heart? And imagine yourself massaging your mind, softening it, relaxing, letting your mind just settle into your skull, into your head, into your life. And you can begin to soften your face, relaxing the jaws, the tongue, the eyebrows, relaxing the ears so you can listen a little deeper today. And we'll let that softening fall down our shoulders. Perhaps you can lighten just a little bit of weight from all that you're carrying and let it fall down your back. Letting your shoulders relax down, down through the tips of your fingers. Softening your belly, your hips, your heart. And just notice the softening of your mind, your body, your toes. And just as if you're turning the dial down on a TV, Imagine everything that has happened before this moment just slowly fading into the background. Turning the volume down of the tasks, the lists, what you need to do, let it go. Let it quiet. Let it become softer. Let it dissolve. As you continue to turn this volume down, imagine that time does not exist in this moment. No shoulds or shouldn'ts. Nothing to do and nowhere to be but here. And as the volumes turn down, times collapse, perhaps there's a quieting. Perhaps you can take a moment to meet your grief today. And ask your grief, what is it that you need? What is it that wants to be heard or listened to? And we'll tune in for the next few breaths. And in this last moment, can you meet the tuggings of your heart with no judgment? Can you meet your grief and yourself with love today? And can you really listen and tune in to what it is that you may need? Not what others may need or anyone else but you. And we'll close this short practice with a deep inhale through your nose and let everything else go. And when you're ready, you can wiggle your fingers, make some subtle movements. You can arrive back into this space, and if there's any reflections, you can write them down, taking note of what your grief is asking of you today.
Thank you. I am stunned by how much I needed that. And I think wasn't listening to my body and my grief telling me that I needed a pocket like that of space. So thank you. I'm like, we're gonna send around clips and the recording, and I'll talk to you after, but I'm like, I kind of need to listen to just that sometime. I think we might need to clip that if you'll let me so that we can all visit back with that. And one thing I want to say too is my husband came in before this call, gave me a little back massage because I was like, I don't know. And I was like, that felt really good. I need my body to be like relaxed and touched and worked on more. But the thought of massaging my brain and going through the practice of trying to figure out how to release tension that is so, it is up here, but how do I physically just focus on how to remove that? I was like, the thought of massaging my brain and trying to figure out how to do that was incredible. And I think I probably need to do that before bed every night because just being in the quiet, figuring out, oh, how would I massage my own brain to find that sort of like peace and release is really amazing. So thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I know I need to massage my mind. That's why I say these things too. So yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully it helps.
that was so special. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And yeah. Oh, there's always something. I always walk away from this being like, oh yeah, that's why I scheduled that months ago because I needed to be in this room with these people. So thank you. Um, Thank you. I'm going to get into questions now. And for those of you who joined a little later, missed anything that I sort of landed us here with at the top, is we're going to get into conversation with me and these three wonderful folks. And after that, there will be room for Q&A, but I invite you to put any questions in the chat that come up for you. You can send them to me directly, or you can send them to everyone in the chat. And before we get into the meat of this, I wanted to pose this question to all of you. And y'all, we've done many webinars and panels and things together. If I say something specifically, to one of you, feel free to answer it. And then it's a free for all. Y'all are welcome to answer every question. And this one I'm just going to open up to the three of you is like, before we really dig into this concept of like pushing back on this myth of moving on, I do want to clarify that we're not telling folks, and this is my intention with this space is not to tell folks that they should like sit and stew and get lost in their grief and hold on to it and be held up by it, right? I'm not saying that, don't move on, don't move through, don't move with your grief. But I'd love to hear from y'all, like, what is the difference between someone telling us from the outside, you need to move on, and how you would meet sort of that recommendation? You should be done. You should be over it. You should move on. But also, what's interesting that and folks telling us, like, you can and are invited to find peace, to find acceptance, to find just sort of a willingness to say, I am grieving, but I do feel okay, or like I've moved through a part of it. And really what I wrote here is like, what is the difference between moving on versus moving through or moving with our grief? Does anyone have any thoughts to kick us off?
That's a big question to start off with. But you know what? I think immediately for me, because I'm just going what comes up immediately, is that I'm a daughter of an immigrant. My mom's from the Philippines, and she has just moved back to the Philippines. And so right now I'm exploring that grief for me. And in recent conversations is an understanding the cultural dynamic where if I am to express these things, if I am to express my grief, like for example with my mom, that sometimes it can be not to address it, to just be, you're fine, just be happy, ignore it, don't cry, and for me, I think I've been met with that recently, um, to where I do think I have tried to push back and say, no, like for me too, and however you want to take it, move on, move through, move with, is that I do need to have some way to process it. And sometimes that is even being able to push back or to say, this is how I'm going to do this, even if you aren't with me on this, or even if you don't identify with the way that I am moving through, moving with this, right? I think it is about how can you do this for yourself and what feels good for yourself? Because sometimes we ask people to meet us where we're at when we just need to meet ourselves where we're at.
Yes. I loved how Magda said, meet your heart, like tugging at you, right? I think I messed up the wording there, but it was beautiful. And just like Julie said, it's about meeting ourselves where we are. Sometimes we say grief has no set timeline, right? You're not going to be done in a year. You're not going to be done in 2 years. You're not going to graduate with a certificate. But I do believe that I have my own timeline. I don't want to stay in that terrible, raw place immediately after my mother died. I needed to be there, but I have my own timeline. And just because other people are uncomfortable with grief, are uncomfortable with people's pain, and they want us to move on, move forward because, gosh, we're being such a bummer. No, right? We get to meet ourselves where we are. We can get to grieve on our own timeline. That's how I like to think about it.
And I just want to add too, thank you both for sharing that because I felt like my parents and the generations before were just surviving. Daughter of a refugee too. So it's like very culturally like, why are you even sad? Like keep going, like you're fed, you have a roof over your head, right? And what I found throughout my grief journey is like there's something in me that felt like it was almost my responsibility that like I need to break this because the consequences of not tending to all the hardships and like the generations of suffering, it's like I see how that's playing out not in a positive way. And so for me, I felt like having to lean towards the grief and be the change. What I've discovered is it allowed and gave permission to my family to do that, my father to do that. And I'm lucky that that was the response because he's now able to start, moving through his own grief. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. Even if no one else is doing it around you, it's like if it's in you, I felt like it's in me. Like I need to shift this. I can't keep this like generation going. Um, and I've seen the positives of that. So yeah, the surprising positives of that too is maybe others get permission to do that and more change happens and occurs.
Thank you so much, all of you. And something that's landing with me from what you just shared, Minga, is around not just this need to do it so that we can, move something, express something, find an outlet for something, but there almost feels like there's this responsibility and opportunity to heal and change a pattern, right? How do we change this pattern that has been to shut off, to ignore, to compartmentalize, like y'all pointed to in different ways, like sometimes for survival and at other times for other reasons. Why do you feel like then it's important for folks to be met with these invitations sort of that we're giving today? Why is it important for folks to not feel the pressure to finish grieving, to be over their grief, and to meet these arbitrary timelines that folks have come up with for us?
I think like Mangdon named, right? I suspect that most of us have come into this space because we've seen what's happened in our families with generations and people who never processed grief and losses of a wide variety of types. That was definitely the case for my family. And what I see in my grief coaching is that, yes, there's the pain of loss, whether it's losing a person, losing a pet, losing a role or an identity, but there's so much additional pain that's added from someone minimizing or trying to rush us through it. So much additional pain that comes from being told, you're doing it wrong. Why haven't you finished doing grieving yet? Just implication that there's something wrong with us, I think causes so much additional suffering.
Thank you.
I'm,
Yeah,
yeah.
Julie.
I may need you to restate the question again because I was just so involved in listening to Charlene's answer.
That's good.
Um,
We're being
just so that
present.
I can, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was just asking, like, why do you feel like meeting this pressure and these invitations with resistance is important for people to at least, maybe if they can't do it themselves, but to sort of be in this conversation, be here today, and to see other folks like modeling and talking about how to push back?
Yeah, I think that it becomes super important. And I mean, this may seem very cliche. And its bottom line is things that you can learn through grief, through loss, is that it is your life. Like point blank period. It's your life. And I think grief can give you a whole new perspective on that. And it makes you rethink things. It makes you challenge things. It makes you become more curious about things because a lot of loss and a lot of grief can maybe flip the script on things where you originally thought it was this way. And then all of a sudden your eyes are open and you're like, no, because I'm feeling it a completely different version of what I'm supposed to be feeling, right? So I think the resistance does come with that curiosity. It does come from, could there be another way to do this? Like what Magda was saying, right? Is how do we find another way? How do we break these cycles? Because this will be a forever process. And yes, there may be some different types of grief or different types of experiences of loss that people have that we feel like we can put it aside, right? I'm of the believer that grief is a lived experience, and those experiences shape who we are, and that becomes a part of your identity. Not that it's a bad part of your identity. It just is. It's a part of your identity. And if you are shaped through that, then that is going to inform how you proceed in life, and how you proceed with relationships and how you proceed with a lot of choices that you're going to make going forward. And each of those different types of loss can reshape that and give you that whole different way of thinking about things. Not sure if that answered the question, but that's what came out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Julie. I have a question, Charlene, that I want to ask because I feel like we're sort of moving through this part of the discussion around like why does this feel important for us to be able to talk about, acknowledge within ourselves, feel sort of like we might need to or have the permission to push back on moving on or moving past something. And so I went to your website recently, as usual, There's a new tagline that I saw up there, and just for everyone, it's the quote is grief isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering with intention. Can you share just a little bit more about this like play between pushing back on necessarily the concept of forgetting and remembering and the work that you do? I would just love for you to explain sort of how you landed there.
Yeah. So I think one, there's so many misconceptions about grief. And part of the resistance sometimes to moving forward is the implication or the association of moving forward with forgetting, like leaving our loved ones behind, leaving that behind, just cutting it off and severing, when really, I think a lot of us like the theory, the grief theory of continuing bonds, of this idea that, oh, we can stay connected in some way. What might that look like? When we don't give ourselves that space to grieve, we think it's binary, right? We think it's like, oh no, we have to forget and we have to move on. Or if we want to remember, we have to stay in the past and stay stuck. And I love the invitation and really the creative way of looking at it of like, what do I want my continuing bonds to look like? And I updated that tagline of choosing with intention because I talk about curating a lot. My approach is called curating grief. And to me, curating, if you're like not an artsy person, don't worry about it. I just define curating as choosing with intention. So to me, that opens up a whole world for grievers. We don't have to choose one or the other. We have so many different ways to move through grief. We have so many potential ways to remember our people in the ways that we want. So I find that really freeing, um, and empowering and potentially beautiful.
Thank you. That sort of line in the sand is something I've always struggled with, where there's this pressure to have a line where you have your time or you have, the space that people think is enough for you to process and sit with and then move beyond and sort of leave all of that in the past is something, like I said, I've always struggled with. And so I just appreciate that. I think again, like invitation that you're giving folks to integrate our loss and our grief in our life moving forward, but with intention, with thoughtfulness. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I have a question from the chat that's actually going to move us into just sort of this like resourcing section of the conversation. I want to talk about community and how finding community, how having folks around you can serve in us trying to maybe build a network of people who are going to allow us to move through our grief in the way that we choose to. So the question for the panel was, what does your grief support system look like and how has it ebbed and flowed and changed over time? Julie, I'd love to actually invite you to answer this question first, just because I know like community and community building is really a big piece of your work right now and something that you're playing with. So, yeah,
Yeah.
what has your community looked like and how do you see that in relation to this experience?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it really stemmed from my own personal experience. I think I always invite people to try different modalities, right? Really find what can work for you. And that's experimenting and trying different things that you have never tried before, right? Being open to it. And so I did. I tried traditional therapy, whether it's one-on-one, which I still do, and I'm still a advocate for that. And I also tried group. And for me, what I found in group therapy, and group work is that's where I found the most progress, is because just like what we're doing today, like we are communing and like we're able to share with others that understand us or can understand us a little bit better than maybe others that have not given us the support that we need. And mine was even very specific. It was the loss of a sibling within a year. So even knowing how niche that was, I knew those people were on kind of my same timeline, as we all could even empathize more with each other that like, yes, my sister died in February. Oh, my sister died in March, right? So we were kind of going through this together. And what I've also found, I think this also stems how I've mentioned my athletic background, just coming from a team atmosphere, is if you have a team that you are surrounding yourself with, that you understand that you have this goal, that you're working towards this goal. You may have different ways to get to it, but you are in it together. And I think there is so much strength in that. And so that's where I've kind of been evolving Hello, I'm Grieving to building the Hello, I'm Grieving Club, to where this will be launching next month. That's the hopes, where I can bring the community together and to where we can do more of this. We can do more niche work on the types of loss. We can educate others because that's also what I found very empowering was the education piece. And that the more that I could educate myself on what I was going through and what I was experiencing, I could put names to things. I had more language for it. I could talk in community about it. Um, and I'm also one, I don't know if you could tell by my disposition, I'm not one that wants to get stuck in the gloom and doom of things. Like I want to approach it head on. I absolutely know that I want to still live a very vibrant life while also honoring the losses that I've experienced. And that's okay. That's this integration. That's the dynamic of being to hold both at the same time. So yes, when I talk about curating my events, and when we talk about curating grief with intention, is yes, I want these to be, and people find it kind of, interesting. It's like, I want these to be fun events. I want this to be where we can play and where we can experience and where we can, yes, cry and laugh in the same breath. And I think this is the goal for people, right? And this is one thing that I also want to put a little caveat is understanding a lot of people will talk about, I want to get back to who I was before. I'm also of the idea that that's not going to happen. And that might be hard for some people to hear. Yes, I'm planning a dance party here in LA. So I'm planning a grief dance party and we're going to shake it all out and do it all. But I think it's you can carry pieces of who you were, but I do think there is this aspect of you are changed, and how can you let the grief alchemize you into something that you want to be? And how can sometimes you could allow that change, and being in community allows you to see that, allows you to witness people at these different seasons and phases of their grief so that you can say, yes, I've been there. And like, yes, that's what I want to get to. And like, how can I do that together? Because all these people in community, they have found different ways to do it. So how can we continue those tough and hard conversations, just like y'all are doing today and putting some amazing questions here in the chat, and learning from one another. So I think community is a central part of healing. And I believe we heal in community. We can't do it alone.
Thank you. Also, dance party. That is the other thing. Other than massaging my brain, that's the other thing I've been missing in my life. So thank you, Julie, for creating that space for us. But thank you too for just reflecting on also speaking to you've done one-on-one, you've done group, you have your people, you have your work. I just am so grateful for you giving these examples too of like, I've tried this, I've tried that. Not everything is going to stick. And also, not everything is going to be right for you for the long term. So, thank you for just showing us sort of how you've pieced together all of these options to support you in different ways. And Mingda and Charlene, I'd love to hear from you too. Like, how has community played into your experience with finding support around you? And also, how has it changed, ebbed and flowed over time, as the person asked in their question? I think y'all, oh, good. I was going to say, y'all are probably just waiting to give the other person space, but I was going to nominate
We're all
one.
being
Thanks,
polite.
Charlene.
Uh, I am not a group person. Uh, in that I don't like grief support groups generally. Like I love connection, but I don't actually love being around people that often, especially when I'm feeling vulnerable. So immediately after my mother died, I knew I wanted to be alone. And I'm very glad I trusted myself there. When I've tried other grief support groups, I was like, it's just too much. It's too much of other people's stories, which is why I created my own. So I could do it my way, where you're not called on, you're not forced to share. It's enough just to be in the room and you get to show up for yourself and in community, but with a specific focus, which is with this curating lens. But there was also a question about like what my support system looked like. It did not include my partner in the beginning. It did not include my husband. After the first couple of times that he tried to help at my mom's house, I was like, you're not invited. He wasn't able to really help me in the way that I needed. He didn't have the capacity to do that. I didn't have the capacity to explain to him how I actually needed to be helped. And I think that's something that we see as a conflict a lot for grieving people, right? We want our older generations to get it. We want them to talk about their pain. We want our partner to understand why I can't throw that box of biscuits away. Some people can meet you there and some people can't. So he didn't join my support circle for a couple of years, but I'm happy to say that that did evolve. I understand him more. He understands me more. He says, I miss your mom, unprompted, right? So I'll offer that like your support circle might not look like what you think it's going to look like, and it might very well evolve. So, agreed with Julie. Try all the things. And part of the accepting is accepting that not everyone's going to have that ability or willingness or capacity.
Can I also add to that? I love that. I love the both sides of it because it is find what works for you. Um, but the partner aspect of it, the friends aspect of it, also let yourself be surprised. Like let yourself be surprised at who shows up for you and welcome them into it and thank them for that. Because I know there was a random friend that I had from years ago that just would reach out to me every few months. And we had never talked in like such a long time. I still don't know what moved her to this day, but the next time I saw her in person, I like thanked her because you don't know and sometimes like exactly what Charlene was saying, sometimes the people that you expect may not be the ones. Not to say that they still can't be included in your life. It's just allow other people that may want to be a part of your support group. And if you're willing to, allow them in as well.
Yeah, and just echoing both of you too, I definitely need a lot of things. There's seasons and times that I need to be alone and I just need to cry and I need to do my thing. And there's other times that I really, really, really need community. I need support. And it's all the iterations. And when I got into this space, like through my major loss, 6 years ago, I needed diversity. I needed different tools. I needed different practices. The therapy, the friends, like different groups, like helping and not. And that's why I really needed to understand like what's missing for me. And that was these holistic tools. This was these different ways in which that I can move through my grief beyond my mind, logic, through the tangible. And that's why I'm so drawn to rituals. That's why I'm so drawn to certain practices, because it's like there's also a little bit of like one culturally, like recognizing when I was in this space, like yeah, it was just very fixed and it felt very narrow. And again, not a lot of diversity and perspectives. And then the other part's a little bit of a rebellion in me where I'm like, this hyper individualistic way is not the way. This way in which that we were just talking about timelines. Who's setting those timelines? The best part about all of our lives is we get to really create it. We get to create these practices. We get to create and find and seek these communities and support systems. Like there's so many resources and people and tools and ways, and that's what's almost the best part about this era of like the old ways don't have to be anymore. We can create these new ways. We can create these communities. And I think that's the most beautiful part about this grief space now and what's emerging through it all and all of its iterations. And yeah, so I guess like what I just want to say for me, I really needed to listen to what I needed and moving towards it. And if it wasn't there, create it, like make it yours. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for this. And that really is a perfect introduction into this next section just of our conversation around ritual and around practices. Minga, I want to ask a question, and then Charlene, I'm gonna ask you a question that'll invite you to share some of the like tools and just like stuff that you brought to share with everyone today. But what would you say, Minga, around like if someone came to you and said, I've never done a ritual. I don't know what a ritual really is. What does it even mean for me to like create a ritual that would be meaningful to me? What would you say? Like, can you sort of not define because that feels very boxed in, but can you just talk about how we can meet this concept of ritual with ease and curiosity?
Yeah, because this has come up throughout my work with folks and people that I've worked with is there's folks that are like, I don't go towards that word because of my own experiences, whether it's through religion or certain traditions that they're like, I don't want anything to do with that. And other folks where it's like, I've never been able to cultivate rituals and I have no ideas what my traditions have been throughout the severing of our bloodlines and, these times, right? Um, but to make it really, really, really simple, just like what we're all saying about making your grief support yours, making the way in which that you grieve yours, these practices and tools can be yours too. It doesn't have to be fixed. Again, like we get to make it whatever we want. And when you think of ritual, if you can let, again, like the meditation, everything else around it dissolve, or even investigate what is the response to that word for you. But you can think of it as just an intentional habit, right? And it could be that simple. And they can be very simple. It's like the way in which that you're making your tea or your coffee in the morning. How do you do it? And just having a little bit of awareness can create this intention, this ritual around it. Um, Even how you walk, there's walking meditations. Can you touch your feet to the ground? Or they can be elaborate and gorgeous and stunning, and you can have a whole room devoted to an altar and whatnot. But just to make it really simple, like awareness to an action can be a ritual, and it can be anything that you do. It could be the way in which that you connect with people. It can be the way in which that you move through the world, or the ways in which that you sit and you're silent and still. So it's so fluid, and that's why I'm so drawn to this world. Is like, yeah, it's like anything in life. It's all the things, and you can make it whatever you need in each moment.
Thank you for that. There's an accessibility that I think you create around it when you open up the definition to, for me, just include it is a habit with intention. It is something that I'm going to do. And how do I bring myself into that habit or that practice or that thing that I'm doing on a regular basis, to be in it and to be present with it and to have intention around doing it.
Mhm.
Um, I always, before getting into this work, I always thought I was like a ritual, like I need the space in the room. I need a ton of time. I need a ton of objects. I need to reflect and make it this huge, beautiful, meaningful thing. And I just really, again, like I just want to say thank you for breaking that down in a way that makes it feel like we can take this time and these moments and infuse like the intention into them, and it doesn't have to be huge.
Thank you for naming accessible because I think we often want to go and buy all these things and you have literally it's how you can drink your water. It's like I like being very accessible and minimal with it. So yes, thanks for naming that accessibility.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. um Charlene.
I've talked to Mangda about how I'm not woo. I am one of those people who are like, wait, incense? I guess I have candles in the house, but therefore, like in case of a blackout, right? Which is so funny because grief work, I feel, on some level is inherently about moving energy and it's spiritual inherently. But I created some visuals to share with you to show what my ritual looks like, what my version of checking in and moving grief looks like. Thumbs up if you can see the screen. Yeah, cool. So, this is my mom, Marilyn, on the right, and she died suddenly of a stroke in 2013. And my rituals all started because I had the problem of trying to clear out her dream house. My rituals look like exhibitions. I don't cry. I found that being with my mother's belongings and having that problem of choosing, again, choosing with intention was what helped. Saying, how do I want to remember my mother? What continuing bond do I want with my mother? And that's what led to curating exhibitions about grief and loss. So I just want to share some of the key moments and what this looked like. First exhibition, 2015, in London, with my mother's belongings, what I could fit in my suitcase. And that was, again, my own timeline, right? 2.5 years after my mom died, 1 year after selling her house. Conventional wisdom from other well-meaning people or from a financial advisor might have said, no, you need to sell her house. Like, what are you going to do with this big house across the ocean? But I knew I couldn't let go of her house yet emotionally, even though financially it definitely did not make sense. So, listening to my own timeline. It was also marking my own transition of grief, how my grief evolved. That first exhibition was marking that transition to the focus on how she lived, not on the fact that she died. Before that, my whole life was about the fact that my mother died. I was dealing with her estate. I was figuring out what I was doing with my own life. So, first exhibition, marking that transition. This was an exhibition in Toronto, 2022, 9 years after my mom died. I was in a different place with my grief, but I was also, yeah, nervous about what would 10 years look like. I kind of wanted to make a new memory for January. So the timing of this exhibition, which was part of a design residency, was really helpful. It was also marking finally tackling the storage unit. Sold my mom's house in 2014. I didn't tackle like the main storage unit until 2022. Sometimes that's outside circumstances. I was living across the ocean, but also really it was about where I was in my grief. I didn't feel ready to tackle some of those boxes of painful items. And it wasn't until this clear out and this exhibition where I had the lens of, okay, 9 years on, what exhibition do I want to put on for visitors about my mother and about grief? So it wasn't until then that I threw away her toothbrush. I found her toothbrush in that little yogurt cup that she had in her bathroom in the storage unit. I wouldn't have been able to face that or to make that choice and make that decision earlier. I was listening to myself and saying, you know what? I know financial advisors would say that's a waste of money to have a storage unit. Therapy would cost a lot more. So that was my part of my math. And I continue to do the exhibitions because I find it's a way to check in with myself, check in with my grief. So things like I found in my storage unit, right? It's connecting with my grief, connecting with them. That is a tag from my grandparents' laundry in New York City. It's my grandfather's business card. And I like unearthed that from the storage unit. And it was amazing because I don't remember him. Yellow phone that was in the kitchen of my childhood apartment. I could not keep the yellow phone. So for anyone who's thinking, I don't have things, I wasn't given access, I couldn't keep things. I hear you. Not everyone has this privilege or problem of having physical objects. It's more like what it represents. Every time I see an old-fashioned phone like that, every time I see like a yellow phone, it makes me think of that yellow phone in my childhood apartment that was next to my grandmother's sewing machine. And I just find this is my way of grieving. This is my way of checking in with myself. And it's a continuous process, right? Photo of little me next to a little framed photo of my mom that she kept in her bedroom. I'm finding now, what is it, 12 years after my mom died, I'm thinking a lot more of like my mom as a grieving daughter, for instance, finding a new way to relate to her. I pick up her camera and I'm like, oh, she loved to take photos too. Isn't that cool that we also have that other bond? So that was just a little short share, but I wanted to give you some visuals because I love visuals. And that's my way of checking in with myself. And I think you can tell defying what I was told I should do and listening to what I needed. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to create a whole exhibition. That's what was I was already doing for work. But I've had clients create small displays on a shelf, have a box, decide to commission some artwork in memory of something that they don't have anymore, but they would like to hold on to in some way and to bring forward in that way. So I invite you to explore that. What might ritual look like for you? What might checking in look like for you? What are opportunities for you to keep making new meaning, right? Developing your relationship with person or place, anything that you're grieving. And thank you for the kind comments.
Thank you. And thank you. I feel like the visuals were so helpful and just this was such an incredible example of it sounds like there are things that you learned or processed or moved through and learned about your grief that you needed the time for. If you had said, I'm going to shut off to my grief, I'm going to completely just draw the line in the sand and move forward and let it go, you wouldn't have had these revelations about your mom. You wouldn't have spent the time to go through all of these things at a point where you felt differently about sitting with them. And so it's just such a beautiful, like, thank you for giving us just such a beautiful example of how the time can be critical for us to actually have beautiful, powerful moments in our grief. Yeah.
You summarized that so well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Julie, I'm going to invite you to answer this question around ritual
Yeah,
for you. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Mine, I think, again, it's so interesting. It's very active. It's very active. Again, with the movement and figuring out, interactive things to do as well. It really is rooted in continuing bonds theory that Charlene mentioned. And again, when I said like the education and the knowledge, it's then, people, I always say this, people say knowledge is power, but it's what you do with that knowledge that's truly the power. And so I think that it's understanding what continuing bonds theory was, I think gave me the power to take action or to also validate and recognize what I was already doing. And so that was like for me, it looked like taking trips. And even how you're saying, as Charlene earlier, like I wanted to do this alone, those trips are just for me and my sister. Like I would go, before I had kids, it was I would go alone for maybe a couple days, right? But now I think that that ritual has changed to where if I can go get away for half the day or, a good chunk of the day, that's something local here. I will do that. I will plan a trip with my sister because, and this would always be on her death anniversary. So that was the ritual behind it, is that this would activate it because I knew when that date was approaching, it started to unconsciously get heavy for me. And so I wanted to put this in place so I had something to look forward to, that I could plan, that I could have my alone time to continue that bond and talk with her. And so as we're talking about things, I still have her car. So I have her car. I drive around in it every day. And there are moments that I take when I am alone that I talk to her in the car. And I think that's also when you're talking about accessibility, that's something that I do. And in the beginning, I couldn't talk to her. In the beginning, I couldn't do that. I'm like, who am I talking to? She's not there. Like, what is that going to look like? What does that feel like? So there was that. I think again, if there's these different practices that can take place, and it also then inviting other people into it. So my sister has two kids, and one of the things that they did every Mother's Day, as we were mentioning Mother's Day earlier, it made me think of this, is that they would bake her brownies and bring it to her in bed. And so that's also something that I was encouraging of them to continue to do, that it was, hey, I know Mother's Day may be hard. Maybe you want to cook some brownies, right? And some years maybe they didn't choose to do it. Some years they didn't. But I would remind them of that. And this year was the first year that they actually spent Mother's Day with me, and actually continued that. And it was so good to hear. My niece said, "Oh, we'll come over and we'll cook brownies." And I was just so taken aback by that. I was like, "Yeah, like do that. That'll be really good." I think I've heard this other thing too that I've wanted to start practicing. I don't go to Starbucks that often, but when they ask for your name, if it is death of a person, right, that where your grief is stemming from, put their name on, because it's another way to speak their name, to have that be put out there. And again, it's small things like that. What's your reservation under? So that when they call that name out, it's your person's name. I think there's little things like that that you can do, because I do think names are also something that people stop saying. I was thinking about this the other day because I'm going to start my season 2 of my podcast. And one of the people that I'm going to be interviewing, that question came up, that I was like, what's your dad's name? And I was wondering, even when we talk about our person, and I think Charlene, as you mentioned, your mom, it's like when you talk about them, you say your name. So instead of just saying, "Oh, my sister," like these are practices and maybe rituals that I can start to do with intention, is my sister Jennifer, right? And being able to say those type of things. And those are the little small ways that you can do things. Or I actually have a mini altar, as y'all were talking about, over my fireplace, where I do have a picture of my sister, and I have a lock of her hair. And at first, when they asked me, "Do you want a piece of her hair?" I was like, "No, why would I want that?" But but now I have that. I have that. And sometimes, there are times when I go over and I might just like touch it or look at it, because it's still, again, that continuing bonds theories. It's another way to still feel connected. And I think that that's something that can be very important. And when it comes to other types of grief, right? I think there's grief in divorce, there's grief in loss of friendships, loss of career, all these different things. I think that there are definitely other ways that we can try to give ourselves grace and try to, again, intentionally do things or create things. And like, I love the curating because to me, that's like designing how you want your life to be, that you can help alleviate some of the different stressors or anxieties or all the different emotions that aren't serving you as you grieve.
You're all amazing. Thank you for this. I had so many other questions and things planned, but I feel like you are just giving folks so many, like Mingda and I were talking about briefly too, is that like little accessible things that you can do that keep you connected, that you control too, right? Julie, what I'm hearing is, it's a lot of things that you have control over, you can practice, and it's not on anyone else's timeline. And you just get to be with these little things that you put out into the world. Love the coffee in the restaurant reservation idea, but you have that control to keep your connection to that person and to do it whenever it feels right for you. Um, Thank you all just for giving really concrete examples, but very heart centered, thoughtful places for folks to sort of explore all of this from. I would love to. There's one other question in the chat that I think we somewhat answered. And I actually have some resources around it that I'm going to share. But if anyone else has a question, please throw it in the chat. But I kind of wanted to invite the three of you to finish on this note of, for folks leaving here today, some of us are stepping into meetings. Some of us are going to be with family. Some of us are going to be alone for the next couple of hours. And we've had this time together here. What would you leave folks with as they step out of this room? Maybe it's a resource, maybe it's a note, maybe it's a saying, just around move at your own pace, honor yourself, move at your own pace, listen to yourself. How do we move at our own pace? If there's anything y'all would like to share with people as they step out of here and aren't in this container anymore, I'd love to hear from each of you. And as we do that and listen to y'all, I would like to invite everyone on the call, if you're interested, I'd love to have you bring your person's name into the chat. I bring my mom, Deborah, in the room everywhere I go. But Julie, just being able to have this moment in this space today to bring their names in here, I would love to see that in the chat and have anyone share something about their person. I would love that. But from the three of you, while folks are moving through that, just what do you want to leave folks with today around moving at their own pace and trusting themselves?
I can start. I think I always come back to, and I think that was a theme that came up today, is do what feels good for you. And I think if you do take those quiet moments and you do meditate on it, listen to yourself, listen to your grief, right? Because I think your grief is trying to tell you something. Um, that you'll find what's good for you at that certain point, at those certain moments. And I think even today, you can tell I have different modalities of moving, through my grief, moving with my grief, processing it. And then Mangda does, Charlene does. We found these different outlets that have worked for us. Or hey, you could try all three. You could try as many as you want. That's the beauty and freedom of it, is that you do have the ability and power. And I also say this with understanding people are going to be at different points. And that I also want to acknowledge that because I know maybe some of the things we're saying, you're just like, I can't do that right now. I can't even conceive of being able to do that right now. And that's a part of this. That's a part of this. And knowing that, again, if we take that time finding out what you want to do for you, and trust yourself in that.
I think the things that are coming up for me is just remembering you're not alone. You always have yourself, you always have nature, people around you, the threads of your loved ones. And I don't know why this flavor of rebellion keeps coming up for me today. It's like I want everyone to rebel, like give yourself permission to grieve. Like you don't need it from anyone else. You don't need it to look like anyone else's grief. Like I don't know, like there's just that flavor in this space where it's like I just really want you to give yourself that permission and autonomy to be however you need to be, to find the people, the practices, the resources that you need and to yeah, let the society, the external I don't know, voices dissolve and just keep coming back to yourself because that's what's going to steer your entire life in a direction that is beyond my words right now. So just to keep coming back to yourself and rebel against it. I don't know, the things that aren't for you, and aren't working for you. Do you? And I'm just really grateful that you're all here today. I'll pass it over to Charlene.
Yeah. I mean, not surprisingly, it aligns so well with all that we've been sharing and what you said too, that I think spaces like this feel comforting to us because we see each other and hopefully we feel seen. And when we go out into a world that's not comfortable with grief, it can feel like we're not seen. So my invitation would be seeing yourself. Yes, we want to be witnessed. It feels good to be witnessed. What are the ways that you can witness yourself and see yourself and your grief with kind eyes? It's so easy to be hard on ourselves and to think that we should be doing things differently or doing things better. But what if we practice seeing ourselves and seeing our grief with those kind eyes? Yeah, that's my invitation for you as you exit the Zoom and into whichever space you're entering next.
Thank you all. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for being present, very present. I know this is always the case, but I'm like, y'all are in the chat, y'all are here, y'all are engaged, you're in the questions. Like, thank you for showing up in this work in such a thoughtful way. You are three of my favorite human beings on the planet, and I am just so deeply grateful to share this space with you today. And thank you to everyone who showed up. I really appreciate all of you being here, honoring us and these speakers, being, again, forthcoming and vulnerable. I just saw someone said, I just realized this is one of the few spaces I've wanted to share my mom's name. I think I'm just so deeply grateful for us being able to build this space for folks today. You're going to receive a ton of resources. That's what we do. We will be at Endwell this year. I see the chat. Yeah, I'll be there. Pause will be there, and we're going to be hosting more events like this. But really, like, thank you for just being here today in this moment. And you'll see me in your inbox. We're going to share more about the folks that are in the room today speaking, and then also everything else we have coming up. And yeah, trust yourself, hold yourself, find the people that are in your support circle that will hold you when you can't. And just thank you. Thank you. And thank you to my mom, Deborah, who I think really has been sitting in a photo over here and doing this work for her. I feel really activated sometimes, but I feel like really connected to her at the end of this hour and a half. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, three. Very grateful.
Thank you. Thanks for putting all this together and inviting us in. And
Yeah.
thanks everybody for being just so open and
Yes.
supportive. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. All right. I'll see you all soon. So grateful. Bye.